dragon flew out on a foggy night. She flew to the left and she flew to the right. She had many a mile to fly that night before she could come down, oh, down, oh, down, oh. Many a mile to fly that night before she could come down, oh. Well, she flew till she came to the towers tall that stood at the corners of the castle wall. She saw the lights from the windows fall brightly on the town, oh, town, oh, town, oh. Saw the lights from the windows fall brightly on the town, oh. She circled the castle on the cold night air, scared all the birds that were roosting there. The hawks and the rooks flew everywhere, high above the town, oh, town, oh, town, oh. Hawks and the rooks flew everywhere, high above the town, oh. Well, out came the queen in her gown of red. She called to the dragon high above her head. Why do you come when we're all in bed and I can't find my crown, oh, crown, oh, crown, oh. Why do you come when we're all in bed and I can't find my crown, oh. Well, the dragon screamed like dragons do, and out of the turrets all the little bats flew, crying, mercy, mercy, what'll we do? There's a dragon over the town, oh, town, oh, town, oh. Mercy, mercy, what'll we do? There's a dragon over the town, oh. And out came the king in his robe of green, and he stood in the courtyard beside the queen. It was the biggest dragon they ever had seen, flying round and round, oh, round, oh, round, oh. Biggest dragon they ever had seen, flying round and round, oh. Well, the dragon moaned and the dragon cried, and the king and the queen went back inside, called for the wizard and the wizard tried to talk the dragon down, oh, down, oh, down, oh. Called for the wizard and the wizard tried to talk the dragon down, oh. The wizard spoke dragon very well, and he said, dear dragon, please won't you tell what makes you bellow, what makes you yell high above the town, oh, town, oh, town, oh. What makes you bellow, what makes you yell high above the town, oh. And the dragon said, oh, woe is me, I have little baby dragons, 1, 2, 3, and they're all trapped by the cold salt sea, and I'm sore afraid they'll drown, oh, drown, oh, drown, oh. They're all trapped by the cold salt sea, and I'm sore afraid they'll drown, oh. Well, you poor sweet thing, the wizard said, as the dragon circled above his head, we'll all set sail to your baby's bed, and we'll bring him safely down, oh, down, oh, down, oh. We'll all set sail to your baby's bed, and we'll bring him safely down, oh. And they sailed to the ledge on the cliff so high, in the cave where the dragonettes did lie, and the cold salt sea ran in nearby with a terrible booming sound, oh, sound, oh, sound, oh. Cold salt sea ran in nearby with a terrible booming sound, oh. And they took the babies from the sheer cliff wall, and they held them close so they couldn't fall. High overhead came the dragon's call, oh, get my babies down, oh, down, oh, down, oh. High overhead came the dragon's call, get my babies down, oh. And that is the tale of the dragon's flight that woke up the court in the middle of the night. Now aren't you glad it turned out all right, and the baby's all safe and sound, oh, sound, oh, sound, oh. Aren't you glad it turned out all right, and the baby's all safe and sound, oh. Froggy went a-rovin' and he did right, Froggy went a-rovin' and he did ride, trusty banjo by his side, He rode up to the lizard's door, Rode up to the lizard's door where he had been many times before, He said, hey lizard, will you rove with me, Said, hey lizard, will you rove with me and we'll explore the galaxy, The lizard hissed and he said, all right, Lizard hissed and he said, all right, if I can get back by Saturday night, They flew through space in a coffee pot, Flew through space in a coffee pot with everything they needed but what they forgot, They flew by the moon and they flew by the stars, They flew by the moon and flew by the stars, but they missed the turn for the planet Mars, Their orbit was a figure eight, Orbit was a figure eight, and that's why the lizard got home late, The president called him on the phone, President called him on the phone, said you done real well, but you better come home, There are verses to this song galore, Verses to this song galore, you can make them up yourself if you want any more, I had a computer and I liked it so, and I asked my mother, what makes it go? My mother stood there with hand on hip, and she said it's powered by a chip. And I thought that over both night and day as I used my computer for work and play. And I had a thought that was passing strange. I thought my computer might need a change. I gave my computer a chocolate chip, and it went act bleep, and it went act blip. And now my programs will not run. Oh, mercy, good gracious, what have I done? I called a repairman from the town to fix my computer, and he came right down, and he took my computer on his knee, and he put some parts in most carefully. And from all this, one thing I know, chocolate chips won't make my computer go. My robot and I live almost alone in a little silver ship we call our own. Nobody there but my robot and me, and a horse and a cow and a chimpanzee. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. We have chips for my robot and chips for me, and grapes and bananas for the chimpanzee, oats for the horse and hay for the cow, and we stash all the trash in the spaceship bow. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. One day last June as we passed a star, we saw a strange creature from afar. Sent it a message, hello there, hi, and it waved all its hands as we flew by. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. We named our ship the Silver Gull. We painted our phone numbers on the hull. You can call us up by satellite beep, and we'll take your call if we're not asleep. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. My robot and I live almost alone in a little silver ship we call our own. Nobody there but my robot and me, and a horse and a cow and a chimpanzee. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. We're off to space, we launch at dawn. Send us a postcard while we're gone. We're off to space. Tadling, go to sleep. Tadling, close your eyes. Look there, dark and deep. Night comes by surprise. Ladies in the castle keep casting spells and charms. Tadling, go to sleep, I'll rock you in my arms. Tadling, go to sleep, 3 moons light your bed. Friendly spiders creep high above your head. In their rockers spin disrespectful tales. Mules come flying in with bundles, bags and bales. Tadling, go to sleep, west wind blowing mild. Hear small night frogs peep, little Ozark child. Here's my word to dream upon, you shall be a boon. Tadling, go to sleep, morning's coming soon. Go tell the dragon, go tell the dragon, oh, go tell the dragon, the unicorn's in bed, 'cause it ate too much pudding, oh, it ate too much pudding, and it ate too much pudding. chocolate. Pudding was chocolate. The pudding was chocolate with whipped cream on the top, and it ate it by the bucketful. It ate it by the bucketful. Oh, it ate it by the bucketful, and I couldn't make it stop. Well, it wouldn't pay attention, wouldn't pay attention. It wouldn't pay attention to anything I said. And now it has a bellyache. Now it has a bellyache. And now it has a bellyache and a pounding in its head. Well, go tell the dragon, oh, go tell the dragon, oh, go tell the dragon that the unicorn's in bed. Let me tell you all the story of the good ship Bodacious and its wonderful journey into space. It took off in a tornado over Parsons, Kansas, and it vanished with never a trace. And it's never returned, no, it's never returned, and its fate is still unlearned. It may fly forever around the solar system. It's a ship that's never returned. Well, there were pigs in the cabin, there were chickens on the engine, and a mule had the bridge for a berth, with a crew of critters and a granny at the throttle. It vanished from the face of the earth. And it's never returned, no, it's never returned, and its fate is still unlearned. It may fly forever around the solar system. It's the ship that's never returned. Well, it was bigger than a micron, it was bigger than a bread box, it was bigger than a Volkswagen bus. It had room for the granny and a couple dozen critters, but it didn't have room for us. And it's never returned, no, it's never returned, and its fate is still unlearned. It may fly forever around the solar system. It's a ship that's never returned. Well, we saw it in the hollyhocks a-firing up the engines, sure left the garden in a mess. There were hollyhocks scattered over 2/3 of Kansas, and daisies all over the rest. And it's never returned, no, it's never returned, and its fate is still unlearned. It may fly forever around the solar system. It's the ship that's never returned. Well, we know they're having fun on the good ship Bodacious, the granny and the critters and all. And after they've seen all those fandangus places, they'll probably give us a call. And it's never returned, no, it's never returned, and its fate is still unlearned. It may fly forever round the solar system. It's the ship that has never returned. goblins, elves and goblins, gnomes and trolls, gnomes and trolls. I can't help but wonder what they're doing underground in holes, down in holes. Elves and goblins, elves and goblins, gnomes and trolls, gnomes and trolls. I can't help but wonder what they're doing underground in holes, ground in holes, down in holes, down in holes. Dear little creature, fallen from space, you can't be comfy in your hiding place. I just love creatures, I'll set you free. Dear little alien, come unto me. Dear little creature, shivering there, you look like a pizza with long curly hair. Won't you come out and sit on my knee? Dear little alien, come unto me. Dear little alien, come unto me. Off on your own, come home with me and use my telephone. I just love creatures, never mind why. Won't you believe me? Now why should I lie? Dear little creature, quivering there, oh, I'll be your buddy, I'll always play fair. Oh, won't you come out and sit on my knee? Dear little alien, come unto me. Dear little alien, come unto me. There's a Martian in my pocket, 7 centimeters tall. I was on my way to the playground when I heard the Martian call. It said, pick me up, I'm right down here, don't you step on me. Please lean down and pick me up very carefully. I said, how come you speak English? But the Martian wouldn't tell. Well, it certainly shouldn't speak English, but it speaks it very well. And it said, pick me up, I'm right down here, don't you step on me. Please lean down and pick me up very carefully. I said, say something in Martian, and it cleared its tiny throat, and went jib, blub, crux, croc, Martian, oh, plow, crip, crop, crowed, and that means pick me up, I'm right down here, don't you step on me. Please lean down and pick me up very carefully. Well, I'll ask the Martian what it's called and what it likes to eat, and if it wants to stay with me instead of in the street. 'Cause it said, pick me up, I'm right down here, don't you step on me. Please lean down and pick me up very carefully. There's a Martian in my pocket, 7 centimeters tall. I was on my way to the playground when I heard the Martian call, and it said, pick me up, I'm right down here, don't you step on me. Please lean down and pick me up very carefully. It said, pick me up, I'm right down here, don't you step on me. Please lean down and pick me up very carefully. Pick me up, I'm right down here, don't you step on me. Oh, please lean down and pick me up very carefully. This is the story of the personal private toad. Once upon a time, very long ago, and farther away than you might think, in the beautiful kingdom of Brightwater, there was a boy named Nicholas Benjamin Weatherberry the 123rd. He had a red shirt and blue jeans and a speckled bandana, and a pair of good, solid boots that had cost all of his birthday present money. And besides that, he had a small, mud-colored, personal, private toad. Now, Nicholas Benjamin was a boy with a strong back, and a warm heart, and a good mind. He believed, among other things, for example, he believed among circles of rocks, and he believed among tall trees. He believed that it was always possible to do better if you really put your back into it. And one day he looked at his toad that he'd always just called, "Hey, Toad!" and he saw no good reason for that. The toad could do better. He was positive. So he put it down on a big white rock in front of him, and he said to it in a firm, ringing voice, "Good morning, Bodacious dragon." "Oh, no," thought the toad, and he tried with all his might to look outraged and appalled and horrified. But although a toad has 4 good feet and 4 passable legs, and an interesting soft belly, and a nice bumpy head, and various other serviceable and admirable parts, one thing it does not have is a facial expression. And so, although on the inside it looked just awful, on the outside it just looked toady, like it always looked. "Bodacious dragon," said the boy, "I see by your great golden wings that you like your name." The toad scrunched down on the rock. "Bodacious dragon," said the boy, "I see by your long, scaly, curly, scarlet and emerald tail, with the midnight blue rattle on its tip, that you like your name a lot." And the toad scrunched down harder. "Bodacious dragon," said the boy, "I see by your mouthful of sharp, white, pearly teeth, with the smoke and the flames coming out of it like forked lightning over a forest, that you like your name a whole enormous lot." And the toad scrunched down, as tight as it could scrunch, and it mourned silently for the days when it was only a personal, private toad. "That's the way, Bodacious dragon," said the boy enthusiastically, snapping his fingers. "If you put your back into it, you can always manage." And he set the toad named Bodacious dragon on his shoulder, and he went off to town with a satisfied smile for his facial expression. Now, the toad had a hard time of it from that day on, because in the kingdom of Brightwater, if you have a name, you have got to live up to it. And if you are only a small, mud-colored, personal, private toad, it isn't easy to live up to a name like Bodacious Dragon. In the dragon business, you have to fly high over the countryside, searing the tops of the trees with the flames of your terrible breath. When the toad tried that, all he could do was bob along about as high off the ground as your elbow, and the flames of his breath hardly even warmed up the edges of the leaves on the bushes and the hollyhocks where he was doing the bobbing. But the boy said, "That's the way, Bodacious Dragon. Put your back into it." In the dragon business, you have to crouch, screaming, on enormous crags and high mountain tops, and the battlements of ancient castles. When the toad tried that, the best it could do was squat on the top of the small green mound of grass on the courthouse lawn, making a miserable mewling noise like a squeaky old gate. A man walking by with his wife saw the toad on the courthouse lawn and said, "Look there, my dear, at the funny little dragon with the stubby, mud-colored wings and the stumpy, short, straight tail and the puff of dust coming out of his mouth every once in a little while." "Oh, no," thought the toad, and he scooted down the grassy mound backwards, the way toads do. But the boy said, "There, you see, didn't I tell you that all you had to do was put your back into it?" In the dragon business, you have to go around frightening maidens, very young maidens who have no experience of life. And you have to do it mean as mean, and pay no attention to their screaming and their begging and their crying. But when the toad tried that, the maidens would pluck him off their shoulders and set him firmly on the ground, saying, "Behave yourself, for goodness sakes." They were never frightened, and they never screamed, or begged, or cried, and the toad was downright humiliated. But the boy only said, "You're doing better all the time, Bodacious Dragon. Just you keep on putting your back into it." Well, things went all the way from bad to worse. The toad grew thin and pale and wrinkled and weary and wobbly. He was a pitiful, sorry sight. He kept hoping Nicholas Benjamin would notice, but he never did. And the day came when the toad couldn't stand it another minute, and he made up his mind to write the boy a letter saying, "Goodbye forever and forevermore, your personal private toad." He would leave the letter in the flower pot on the back porch where he always slept, and he'd go far away forever and forevermore. He knew where the boy kept his felt-tip pen. It was almost as big as he was, but the toad was clever, and he had figured out how to manage. First, he hopped up on the table where the pen was, and he pushed it over the edge onto the floor. Next, he pulled off its top so that it would write. Then he found a nice crack in the floorboards, just the right size around, and he wedged the pen into the crack, with the point sticking up, sort of slanty. That was all hard, but that was not the hardscrabble part. Now the toad had come to the hardscrabble part. Now he had to take a small piece of paper and pull it back and forth across the pen's felt tip to write his message of sorrowful farewell. And he was just starting to do that, moving the paper very carefully, because his handwriting was not really any better than his dragoning, when he had an idea. "Oh ho," thought the toad, and "aha," thought the toad, and he shivered all over, because it was such a wonderful idea if he could just do it.
and he let the piece of paper drop, and he went over to the felt-tip pen, and he leaned his forehead gently against it, and he began to write. Well, when Nicholas Benjamin, the 123rd, came home that afternoon and went out to see the toad, he found him sitting in the flower pot with his head sticking out, waiting, and the toad still had no facial expression. But written right across his forehead, right in among the wrinkles and the bumps, in solid black letters, was this message: "The only back into that I care about is back into a toad again." The boy hunkered down, and he picked the toad up and held him on the palm of his hand for a long time, looking at the letters, because they were a little bit scraggly and sprawly and crookedy. He read them over and over and over until he was absolutely sure he understood them. And then he said, my goodness gracious, I'm sorry. I didn't know. And I am going to give you a brand new name." "Oh no," thought the toad, "here we go again." And he scrunched way down in the boy's hand and waited for the very worst to happen. Bodacious lion, maybe. Bodacious elephant. Bodacious unicorn. Bodacious President of the United States. Oh no! But Nicholas Benjamin surprised him considerably. "You," he said, and the toad scrunched down. "You, from now on, will be named Bodacious Toad." "Well, I can handle that," thought the personal private toad. And sure enough, he did. This is the story of the little tiny girl that had no name. Once upon a time, very long ago, and farther away than you might think, in the beautiful kingdom of Brightwater, there lived a little tiny girl who thought she was in disgrace. Now, being in disgrace in and of itself is not all that unusual. All normal human children are from time to time in disgrace. Sometimes this is because they will not mind for 3 days in a row, which is 2 days in a row too many. And sometimes it is for various other offenses suitable for children, which everyone knows they will grow out of if you are patient with them and polite to them, as you should be. And when a child is in disgrace, in the ordinary way of things, that lasts a short time. Perhaps 1 hour and 15 minutes. Perhaps 1 day and another day and half of 1 day more. But this little tiny girl had always been in disgrace, so far as she could tell, and that is not one bit ordinary. The day the little tiny girl was born, her mother took one look at her and went, "Oh, my gracious, galloping goodness." The day the little tiny girl was born, her father took one look at her and went, "Oh, my gracious, galloping goodness sakes alive." The day the little tiny girl was born, her grandmother was there too, lending a hand. And she took one look at her, and she popped the new girl baby into her cradle bed without a word, which was not a good sign. The grandmother thinned her lips way down in a line like this, which was worse yet. And then she said, "I'll have back the hand I lent you right now, thank you very much," which was worst of all. The neighbors came in to see the baby, because of course everybody in the world likes to see what's just been added to the world. They'd walk up to where she lay, turn back her quilt, take one look, and then they'd cover her back up again and go straight home. "The corn is getting tall, isn't it?" they'd say, as they went out the door. Or, we sure do need a good rain, don't we? Or, isn't it terrible, the price of eggs? But they said nothing about that new little girl baby. What could they say, after all, when she had no name? If her name had been Lobelia, they could have said, well, will you just look at Lobelia's pretty eyes? They're exactly the color of blue violets when the sun first strikes them in the early morning. And if her name had been Hester Sue, they could have said, well, will you just look at Hester Sue's pretty hair? It looks just like corn silk, all soft and golden and curling round your finger when you touch it. And if her name had been Maria, they could have said, well, will you just look at Maria's pretty mouth? It looks like a rosebud, and it's the very same color as cherry pie cherries. But how can you talk about something if it doesn't have a name? And this little baby didn't even have one name to her name. There are places, of course, where grown-ups will call a child baby right to its face. They'll say, hello, baby, or, oh, see, baby. But grown-ups in the kingdom of Brightwater were very polite and kind, and they knew how babies hate that. They never did it, unless it was an emergency. And even then, they would remember to apologize. Look out for that gigantic, enormous falling rock, baby, they might say. But then they would always add, begging your pardon. And there was no emergency this time, nothing but that child lying in its cradle, peacefully sleeping. Well, time went by, and the little tiny baby turned into a little tiny girl. And as she went along, she began to notice what a terrible time it was that was going by for her. Nobody talked to her, for instance. Sometimes they would smile, and sometimes they would point, and sometimes they'd hand her a cookie and pat her on the head to show that they knew she was there, but they never talked to her. The other children might have wanted to play with her, but whenever one of them tried, that child would say, hey, you, want to play? And along would come a mother and say, what a way to talk! We don't call people, hey, you. For goodness sake, it isn't nice. And the other child would be marched home to think about its manners, and that would be the end of that. The little tiny girl got more and more lonely. She was so lonely that when her sheets rustled at her, she appreciated it. She was so lonely that when the water faucet dripped or the drain in the sink gurgled, she would look up and say, were you talking to me? She was so lonely that she sat in front of the mirror just to have herself for company. And the more lonely the little tiny girl was, the more sad and sorry all the other people were, because they loved her. They loved her very much, but they didn't know what to do. At last one day, the little tiny girl was out fishing down by the creek, all by her own self, the way she always did. And down the road to the creek she saw coming a bright yellow pickup truck, with a very old lady driving it. The little tiny girl knew who that was, all right, and she was so glad to see her. Magic Granny, called the little tiny girl, dropping her fishing pole and running up the road to meet the truck, waving both her arms to be sure that the very old lady would see her, and being very careful to stay way at the far side of the road where the place where walking was. Oh, Magic Granny, please stop, she called aloud as she could call. I have a question. Magic Granny slowed down carefully and pulled over to the side of the road and parked, while the little tiny girl stood carefully still and waited. She turned off the truck motor, and she opened the truck door, and she patted the seat beside her for the little tiny girl to climb up and make herself comfortable. And when she was settled, Magic Granny said, "Speak right up, child." And she straightened her glasses where they'd gone all crooked over the top of her nose. "I can tell by the frown line that goes straight up and down between your two pretty eyes that you have a serious problem." And the little tiny girl opened her mouth to start to say something, but the granny went right on. "Speak right up," she said. "I can tell by the worry lines that go left and right at the corners of your pretty mouth that this is something difficult. I can tell by the way you're winding your pretty hair round and round your finger that it's something I had better handle with dispatch." And so the little tiny girl told her the whole long, terrible, lonesome, awful, pitiful story. Magic Granny listened carefully, with her elbows on her knees and her chin in her hands, sitting there in the seat of the pickup truck, and every so often she'd make a little noise with her tongue like this. When the little tiny girl was entirely through, Magic Granny sighed and took off her glasses and wiped them shiny clean on the hem of her skirt and sighed again and put them back on, and she said, "You, Missy, you have been under a false impression." "I have?" said the child. "I thought I was in disgrace." "Well, that's wrong. That's entirely wrong," said Magic Granny. "Tell me, what is a thing called when it doesn't have a name?" "Why, it isn't called at all. That's the problem." The granny went again. "Foof, child," she said, "you're not thinking straight. When something has no name, it is called nameless." "Nameless?" said the little tiny girl. "Nameless." "Yes," said Magic Granny. "And so you see, that's what you are called, too." "I am?" "Indeed you are, nameless of Brightwater, as I live and breathe. And why your own grandmother didn't know that, I'm sure I can't imagine." "She was upset at the time, they tell me," Nameless said. "Well, no doubt she had her reasons. But nameless you were from the very first minute, and nameless you are this very day. And there's no reason why you should have any more trouble with this naming business, for you are well and truly and righteously properly named." The little tiny girl was so happy that her violet blue eyes shone, and her cherry red mouth grinned, and her corn silk yellow hair curled up more and more and more. "Kiss me quick," said Magic Granny, "and then you run home and you tell your folks just what I said." Well, Nameless threw her arms around the granny's neck and squeezed her tight, not minding that she got all dusty off the steering wheel of the pickup truck doing it, and she kissed her right smack dab on the cheek. And then Nameless hightailed it home to tell everybody. When she told her mother said, "My goodness!" When she told her father said, "My goodness gracious!" And when she told her grandmother said, "Well, forevermore." And from that day on, everybody could talk to her. They'd say, "Well, Nameless of Brightwater, as I live and breathe." And the little tiny girl never ever again had any more trouble with being nameless.